It is 12 o'clock, and thank you all for joining us on our broker call today. I'm Tom Fulkerson. I am the managing broker for both the Decatur and the South Fulton Market Centers, and I am your host today. I don't know if Deborah is on the call yet or not, or if she's going to join us. But Deborah, if you're here, welcome. So every call that we do, we try to bring information to you guys that we are dealing with behind the scenes. And one thing I wanted to talk about today, and please keep in mind, this is an open forum. So if you have a topic that you would like me to address, I am happy to do so. I'm going to talk about a couple of things today that I dealt with in the last couple of weeks that I think everybody needs to be made aware of. And the first of that is signage and signage guidelines. And the reason this became topical for me is one of our agents in the Decatur Market Center had a complaint filed against him 2 years ago. And I finally got a call from the Real Estate Commission. And the result of that action is that he has to redo all of his signage. And so I just wanted to go over some basic rules with you guys, and then we can move on to a couple of other topics, because I know that this is not the most interesting topic in the world, but it is something that we all need to be made aware of. Please stop me or raise your hand if you have any questions while we're on the call. And so, as you're aware, when you are advertising real property for sale, it has to be under the guidance of your broker. And the broker is supposed to approve all advertising, your signage, your cards, the whole kit and caboodle. And I know for a fact that we have not been honoring that pretty much for the most case. And I know that Keller Williams is a company that likes to allow our agents to advertise themselves, and that's great. But there are certain Georgia Real Estate Commission guidelines that must be upheld, or you face the challenge of getting a complaint filed against you and having to redo everything, which can be quite costly. Okay. So when you are advertising property on your sign, the name of your market center must be as large or larger in prominence on your sign than your name and phone number. And what happened with this one particular individual is that his signs were just the opposite. It was all about the agent and their phone number and their photograph, and Keller Williams was small at the bottom. And that's what got him in trouble with his signs. In the past, I was a broker at another organization, and one of the agents there had redone their signage, and it was quite lovely. And but they got turned in, and they had to redo their signs, their website, everything. And so I just want everybody to be aware that before you order signs, that you need to have them approved by your broker. And we've kind of gotten away from the even for what Keller Williams wants us to do. And 33% of that sign is supposed to be red according to the guidelines from Keller Williams. So are there any questions about that at all? Y'all help me out here. I don't want to talk for an hour without some help here. No? Okay. So does everybody understand what we need to do in terms of our signage, and the same with our business cards, and the same with any advertising that we're putting out there where we're advertising real property? Barbara, your hand is up. Thank you, Barbara.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, Tom. I wanted to say that the subject you're speaking on today is one of the subjects that Seth Wiseman spoke at the real estate conference last week. He spoke on the very same thing that you're talking about today. And So I hope that they're paying attention to what you're saying.
Well, guys, we're in crazy times, and we're in a crazy market, as we all know. And, real estate pretty much is self-policed. And all it's going to take is one disgruntled agent who didn't get the deal on a multiple offer situation to turn you in if you're not in compliance. And so I just want everybody to understand that we want you to be the focus of your business, and we want you to be the focus on your signage. But we have certain guidelines that we must adhere to, and that includes social media posts. That includes any type of other advertising that you're doing. And quite frankly, red may not be your favorite color. I've heard that a lot, but it doesn't have to be your favorite color, because you're with the #1 company in the world in terms of real estate and number of agents and volume done in real estate. So I think that it's only to your advantage to use that. So we're going to move on. If anybody else has any questions, let me know on that topic. And then I'm going to move on to another topic here regarding earnest money. And I want everybody to be very clear. Last week, we had an agent whose buyer terminated during their due diligence period, which they had the right to do. But the agent didn't really explain to the buyer what the process was of getting that earnest money back in their pocket. Okay. And that is something that we must do a better job of, because even though the due diligence, the unilateral termination was signed in time and sent over to the listing agent in time, the listing agent was very non-communicative, and also the seller had left on a trip to go to Mexico. And so by the time it got to my desk, I was going to have to do a 10-day letter. And I actually had to reach out to that other broker, who was a Keller Williams broker, and say, can you please get your agent to respond? Because we have no idea where we're at with this. And, I had to get on a 3-way call with our agent. Well, it was a team. The agent was actually on vacation, but the team lead. And I had to get on the call with this buyer. And the buyer's like, I just feel like I've been left in the dark. And he didn't really know the process of what happens if we can't get that unilateral termination signed off on. And I get this question a lot, but you guys need to know that if we can't get that unilateral termination signed during the due diligence, or when the due diligence is before it's over, we have to do a 10-day letter as the holder of the funds to get that earnest money back to the rightful party, even if there's a dispute over it. So that's why I always like to suggest that you allow your local broker to hold your earnest money funds, because if you are letting a closing attorney hold those funds, it's going to take a lot longer than it will for me to write a 10-day letter and get it out. And sometimes they don't even follow the rules of the contract. To be quite honest, I've dealt with that where they've given it to the wrong party before and have not communicated to either party about their intentions, because they're not governed by the Georgia Real Estate Commission. So no offense to any closing attorney, but it's just much, much better for your client if your broker's holding the funds. So please explain to your client, the buyer, what happens to the earnest money and what the process is should they decide to terminate that contract. Okay, let's have some conversation about that. Anybody? Deborah, I see you're on the call. Any words of wisdom from you?
Not yet. Did I miss the advertising part already?
Well, we talked about it, but we didn't really have any conversation about it. So I would love to hear some input from you. And I basically just said that I had an agent who had to redo all their signage because they weren't in compliance and somebody turned them in 2 years ago. And it
Oh.
just finally surfaced with the real estate commission.
Well,
And,
they
you
are a
know,
little bit behind because I've got a grit call this weekend. So they on something from 2018. So they're a little behind.
yeah, yeah. But essentially, the broker's name and phone number has to be as large or more prominent or larger on your sign than your information. And I know a lot of us don't really do that because we're with a company who supports, you know, your business and allowing you to be the focus of the Georgia Real Estate Commission.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is I think what's even more important than our signs is social media. If you're advertising properties, you've got to put Keller Williams in there too. Anything that is advertising a property must have in other words, think of it like this. Anything you're advertising and the consumer is confused about who you belong to as far as your license, they need to be able to, that's how they make the complaint. They need to know which Keller Williams office to call. So anything that advertises any type of house, condo, commercial property must have, you can have your logo as well, you can have your name as well, but it also must have the Keller Williams logo and phone number. But if it's not like your business cards, that's a requirement, but it's not really advertising a house, but we have to be able to identify you. So that's why you have your business cards like that. But the logistics of GREC is if a house is being advertised on Craigslist, Facebook, any of those internet type situations, television, any of that, you must have the logos. That is very important. And the other thing is also making sure you're putting a disclaimer about each office is independently owned and operated. And like your website says at the bottom, all the websites say that if you're using the Keller Williams. If you've created your own website, you need to make sure that's on there. And then also, this is a practice I use. Information is deemed guaranteed or not guaranteed. You need to check it out yourself. So if you've been around for a while and you've looked at the small print at the bottom of FMLS and Georgia MLS, it used to say something like information is deemed reliable, but not guaranteed.
But not accurate.
That's right.
Yeah.
They've changed it. It says the first part is still there. Okay, this is how Tom and I are nerds. We've read the bottom of our FMLS sheets. Okay, it now says, we know nothing about nothing. I'm paraphrasing. You need to check it out yourself. In other words, it says, I can't say it verbatim, but basically it's saying this information is not guaranteed. You need to use your own inspectors, so on and so forth, to make sure that the information you're receiving from this agent is accurate by using your own inspectors, so on and so forth. So if you've never done that, or if you've got one in front of you right now, look at the bottom of the page. They've changed the wording on it. So that's important for you to do too. And I use it quite a bit. If I'm sending something out, I have that disclaimer. This information is reliable, but it's not guaranteed. That's why you need to do your due diligence.
Yeah, I get a lot of complaints, and Deborah, I'm sure you can relate to this as well. I have dealt with complaints where they're like, well, the FMLS sheet said this, and that's not the case. And so the seller lied. And I'm like, please understand, if you look at the bottom of the form, it says deemed reliable or deemed to be accurate, but not reliable, or whatever it says.
Yeah.
It's, you know, you've got to check it out yourself.
Yeah.
And
I will say this too.
Question in the, go ahead.
Let me say one more thing and then I'll be quiet. In case you don't realize this, FMLS and Georgia MLS are marketing companies. So they have an agreement with our brokerages for us to put our listings on. Then they sell it to the search engines, but they own that property and they can do whatever they want with it once we put it on there. So when I get a broker call saying, but the commission said this and now it says this, and the agent, put in there that it's septic, and now we found out it's sewer, again, we go back to the small print. Information is reliable, but not guaranteed. So you can't throw that in anyone's face to say, the FMLS said, what was your due diligence to make sure that that's accurate? Now, I have the practice of always printing out FMLS or Georgia MLS when I'm writing an offer, just so I have, number one, have everything, and also I can verify commissions and so on and so forth. So going to FMLS and Georgia MLS, they will tell you, just like an inspector will tell you, we know nothing about nothing. We just did the inspection. You paid us. Thank you very much. Good luck. That's it.
Question?
Sure.
Does that also apply if the seller put maybe false information on the seller's property disclosure, like unknowingly?
Well, the sellers, just Deborah, I'll let you go ahead.
No, so are you saying that with the seller's disclosure, you're using that information to put in FMLS?
Yeah, or there was a mistake, and let's say the seller put sewer instead of septic because the seller thought it was a septic, or sorry, sewer.
So here's my script with a seller's disclosure with the buyer. Hey buyer, this seller's disclosure is our roadmap to the inspection. We want to make sure that everything the seller said yes and no to when we hire the inspector, let's make sure the inspector checks that out for us. What usually happens is they'll mark sewer, everyone takes that for the gospel, and then they move into the house and find out they have septic. And then you call all the agents and the inspector and so on and so forth. So the mistake by a seller on a disclosure is the seller doesn't have to do anything but put a sign in the yard and sell it. Now you, buyer beware, we are a buyer beware state, need to prove that the seller knew they made a mistake. That's called also lawsuit.
Yeah, I mean, the
Hey, I
seller's
just
property disclosure is also to the best of their knowledge. And I can tell you that innocently, when I sold a house that I had lived in 14 years ago, I mean, I had lived in the house for 14 years and I sold it about 3 years ago. There were things that I just really couldn't remember. And so the disclosure says it's to the best of their knowledge. But again, I like what Deborah said, that, it's a roadmap. And, if you think that the seller willingly did not put accurate information for whatever reason, again, you're going to have to prove fraud, which is very hard to do. And then that's going to turn into thousands and thousands of dollars in a lawsuit. So,
I'm sorry. I thought you were pausing. I had an exact situation, but this is Yolanda Martin. How you doing? I'm sorry, Tom.
hi, Yolanda.
Hi. I hope I didn't interrupt, but I'm so happy that you guys are speaking of this because I had the exact situation that actually happened. May I share and then go from there? Hello, Tom, can you hear me? Yeah, so the seller, we went out to the home. And
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, on the listing, it states that it is public. Okay, and so of course, when we went out to view the home and we second view, buyer definitely wanted it. The seller mentioned it's on septic. She said, but I had it serviced 10 years. And then we said, wait, the listing says public. She said, yeah, that was an error. Okay, so my client was fine with that. Just so happens that they're okay with that. But I did ask, since she stated that there were documentation indicating that it doesn't need to be serviced for another 10 years or so. So I asked for that at closing if she would be able to provide that. She said, absolutely, she had it. So then I had a chance to talk with the agent. Of course, I contacted the agent when we left the house, and the agent stated that she was told that it was public by the seller. She said, I'm surprised she said that to you all because it was, she told me that. And nonetheless, it's all okay, except for my buyer definitely wants that documentation. And we're told we're going to get it within 2 days and take it from there. And then just years ago, at least over 20 years ago, I purchased a home in Stone Mountain. It was one of my first homes. Did not know it was septic. and didn't find out until a year later when it burst. So when this happened recently with my client, I was able to share with her, well, if she's saying that it was serviced, it doesn't need to be serviced for another 10 years and she can provide documentation, then we'll go ahead and accept that because, you know, she loved the house and it wasn't going to be a deal breaker, but I needed to protect the client. So they stated that they would provide that, but that is really huge when the agent told me that she thought that it was public. And like you said, Tom, it is to the best of their ability. But honestly, guys, this seller knew because she did explain to my client, well, you know, I'm putting the
Well, I
red.
mean, you would know if you're getting a utility bill from the municipality that you live in. It includes water and sewer.
Right, right.
I
That's true.
would, you know, I'm all about, let's learn a lesson here. What the
Yes.
lesson is why don't you, especially in a rural, so that you can verify that it is actually on public sewer.
Hello?
Hello?
I think you cut off
I
mid-sentence.
think we froze. Yeah, it was a froze.
Yeah,
Did I freeze? Everybody was frozen. Now I kept talking.
Correct. Everyone was frozen.
Okay. So, you know, I don't know if you heard this or not, but I'm all about the lesson learned. The lesson learned is, especially if you're in a rural municipality, ask for a copy of the utility bill. That way you can verify if it's on public sewer or not during your due diligence period.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's cool. Thanks, Tom. And she is still doing due diligence, so that's fine. But again, it's not a deal breaker, but I just wanted to share that just because that was the topic and an excellent topic. I'm so glad I caught that. Thank you, Tom.
You're welcome.
Tom, you have a question in the chat about coming soon, but I want to make a remark about the topic we were just talking about. The other thing should have happened is that seller's disclosure should have been updated, so that if something does come about later down the pike, we have a document that was corrected.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Makes sense. Absolutely.
So there's a question in the chat box about coming soon listings. Coming soon listings are just like any regular listing, whether it's coming soon, active, or sold. The broker's name and phone number always has to be prominent on the advertising of those listings because you're advertising real property in the name of the broker, whether it's coming soon, active, or sold. Does that answer your question?
What was the question?
Yeah,
Oh, it's in
yeah.
chat.
I was asking what were the advertising rules behind coming soon, because I'm not familiar with that.
So there's a lot of coming soon controversy, and just know that it's being discussed at NAR and also in our local boards because it's being abused. This is why the new registered user situation popped up, which means you get a listing signed, and you know our contracts changed this year. We have marketing date, commencement date, when you went to the house date, the date that you filled out the form, all of those, like 4 dates on there now. If you look at, and you're giving the seller the proper brochures at your listing appointment, in our GAR forms, it says that we have to put the coming soon on, and we are not to accept any contracts, things of that nature. We won't get into that. We're talking about the advertising part. If you put a sign up and you put coming soon, you better have a listing agreement that's signed as well. Then you're going to go into FMLS and Georgia MLS, and you're going to register that user. Registered user, you won't be able to make any changes after you hit that enter button. Your broker or your agent services would have to go in and do that. Whatever date you put on there, you would, if you want to change it to coming soon, which I wouldn't go through registered, coming, and then active. Just do registered and active or coming soon and active. They've made it very cumbersome now. So that's what I'm saying. I've gone through it. So just don't do all of that. If your seller needs some time to do work or whatever the case may be, you can use either the registered or you could use the coming. The registered does not show to all agents, only you. Coming soon does show to all agents. You are not supposed to accept any offers during coming soon, hence the abuse. Because people are accepting offers, giving them to the seller, picking one, and then it goes straight from coming soon to pending, which is why it's become a problem. The whole point of coming soon is to help provide inventory to our market so the consumer has a fighting chance to say, hey, that's coming on the market on the 14th. We're going to be the first one in the door. And that's what's not happening. So if you're new to the business and you're wondering, what are the parameters? You have to have a signed listing agreement. You can put a coming soon on your sign. You can do coming soon only on the sign, but you're not really supposed to be advertising it. That's why the brochure and our FMLS rules conflict. And so that's why there's some people that are doing it the wrong way and some are doing it incorrectly and some are doing it correctly. So I would go to your broker to say, what is our policy in the office for coming soon, and follow that. That way, if Greg ever calls to say, or you get a complaint, then the investigator is going to ask myself or Tom, what is your policy in the office? Because it all comes down to Greg and the policy of your brokerage more than anything else, okay? So that's kind of how we handle coming soon in our office. Tom might have a different answer on that.
Well, I mean, I don't really have a different answer, but what I do know is that it's only to your seller's advantage to advertise that property to the public and to open it up to all of the agents that are members of FMLS and Georgia MLS, because you are really not doing your seller a good service by not opening it up to all realtors, because who knows what somebody might be willing to pay for that property, but you haven't given them the opportunity. Okay, that is my standard response. I don't understand why anybody who has a listing, and if it's coming soon, put it in FMLS. It's coming soon. You're only helping your seller potentially get more money for that property.
Okay, thank you.
What other questions do you guys have today? Or is there another topic that you want to talk about today?
Before you go to another topic, can I just also, a couple of things I'm noticing on FMLS and Georgia MLS when it comes to advertising.
Absolutely.
We need to watch our words. We don't want to put things in there about religion, temples, churches, children, grocery stores, anything that has to do with familial status, race, any of those things, you need to be very, very careful. Let me give you an example. Executive home in a quiet cul-de-sac neighborhood. What's wrong with that?
The word executive,
And the word what?
not quiet.
What?
Quiet. How do we know it's quiet? Do you have a room in the basement and you're staying there while you're listing it? We don't. Could be a barking dog all night long next door. An executive is one of the most overused words, and it is not a word you should be using, although I see it on a daily basis on flyers that are emailed to me. There's nothing wrong with saying it's luxury or whatever the case may be, but executive, you are, what if there's someone who's not an executive that can afford that particular property? What about walking to the park?
That sounds like it wouldn't be a house for a sex offender.
Well, this person's in a wheelchair. You just told them they could walk to the park. See what I mean? There are certain things that we're doing and we're just doing it for advertising. We don't even think about it. So I would stay away from quiets and walking and executive and things of that nature. You can say minutes too. I don't know how many minutes with traffic, but it's minutes. There's just little different things, parks close by is that explains it. You don't have to say walk to the park or whatever. Just be real careful with some of the advertising things that you're using. Find out, find a marketing book or something like that that will give you different words. Even sometimes when you look at some of those marketing books, especially if they're outdated, they may say certain things. We notice that we've gotten away from the word master suite and we're using owner or primary, just different things like that. Just pay attention to what's going on in our environment and stay away from those words. Does anybody have any question about, this is the safe place to ask if you're using them, so we can let you know if that's the proper way to describe something. So
I
don't
do
be
have a
embarrassed.
question.
Yes.
Why can't we use grocery stores?
You can say grocery stores, don't say what type.
Oh, you mean
For-
the type, not like a Whole Foods or minutes from Publix or anything like that?
Right. Like for
Okay.
instance, sometimes people will say it's a Jewish or it's a, Chinese or whatever. I've seen that on FMLS and I'm cringing like someone didn't run that by their broker. And I know it's innocent because they are trying to say, what you're doing is you're telling us what kind of neighborhood this is. And that's steering. So I can live in a neighborhood and I like going to a Chinese grocery store if that's what they're advertising themselves as, but that's not something as realtors we're supposed to do. So that's just an example. So I just want to be, this is a safe place for us to ask this type of stuff. So that's why I'm giving you examples, because if you wanted to go through FMLS and Georgia MLS, you'll find it.
I think, Deborah, that was a really good point. And, here's the thing, guys, in FMLS and Georgia MLS, we need to be talking about the property itself. Okay. And then everything else is secondary. You can say close to parks, stores, shopping. That's all you need to say. They're not buying that. They're buying the house. And that's what we need to focus on. Barbara, did you have a question?
I just wanted to add to what you and Deborah have already said. And for instance, in advertising, things like perfect neighborhood for a family or specific comments in regards to the schools or some other areas that we have to watch when we're advertising and use the language, for the description.
And looks like Bashira, you've got your hand raised?
Yes, I just wanted to ask, I'm a new agent. I haven't had any thing put on the MLS yet, but I heard Deborah mention that we're not using master suite, master bedroom, and I just wanted to get more information on that because I hadn't heard. So we don't use the word master. Is that correct?
I'm not saying you can't use it. It's still being used because certain things that we fill out for advertisements and things like that still use that term. But I think we're going to be moving away from it and using owner or primary. No one's going to come after you if you use that word. But I'm just saying, I'm noticing the shift. I don't use it anymore in any of my listings. I use either owner or primary. So that's really your call. I just think we're starting to shift away from using that word.
Okay. Thank you.
So I have another one, Tom.
Okay, go.
You send out postcards and you go, hey, coming soon, help me pick your neighbor.
Yeah, that's really, really bad.
That almost sounds like it's borderline violating fair housing.
Right.
Well, it is.
If you're using that, you're gonna have to trash those postcards.
Are you guys still writing love letters to the sellers when you make offers?
Please say no, everyone. Please
We're
say
not,
no.
we don't encourage that. You know, I think it's really setting up some potential issues for discrimination. And I think that we need to not write love letters. Quite frankly, if I see them on any of our listings, I don't even look at them.
Yeah, I'm
You know what,
starting to
guys,
see that
we're
in
really,
private remarks.
it's really about the, it's really about the numbers for the seller, okay? That's really what it boils down to. That's what we're all about. It's the numbers for the seller, getting them the most money in the shortest amount of time with the best terms, okay? And when you start getting into the area of let me pick your neighbor, or you know, choosing a buyer because they wrote a letter that may not be the best. It's just, it's bad practice, number one. And I feel that it's a violation of fair housing.
I agree. I've never been a fan of love letters at all. I know when they became popular, it was a big deal. But more than likely that buyer is going to violate everything known to man in that letter, and it has nothing to do with anything. It's exactly what Tom said. It comes down to dollars and cents. And, you know, when are you closing? Is your loan good? Is your cash, you know, legit? And that's it. Everything else is just fluff, guys. And we are the king and queens of fluff when it comes to real estate. You know, we have the reputation of making a doghouse sound like, you know, a palace. So, but we have to make sure that we're accurately, you know, describing what, you know, the narrative. I have another advertisement. How many of you are using Photoshop, or your photographer has a way to make the sky bluer and the grass greener? What are you doing about those photos? I don't know how to put it out there. What else are you saying about those photos in your advertising? Or if it was or virtually staged?
Have to say what's been enhanced in the photos.
Can it be considered false advertisement?
Ding, 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 ding. So it's okay to enhance the sky and enhance the grass and stage it, but you probably want to put something in there that it is a virtually staged property or something like that. Or you could do kind of what I've done. If I've used virtual, I will show the empty room and then I will show it staged, or however you want to put it in that order. You might put the staged one first just to give them an idea. Sometimes I will make signage boards that I put in the property when it's vacant, so that a person can have a visual of what the room could look like. So you can communicate the same thing on the internet and FMLS and MLS. But if you're not letting them know that and then they walk in, they may consider that false advertising.
And also, if you're not disclosing that, it's a big old disappointment when you walk in that property.
I've got a question, Mr. Yeager. If you are marketing a property and a tenant is living in there, we have to get permission from the tenant in order to take interior pictures. Is that correct? Do we have any kind of verbiage, or is there a form that we can use to have the tenant to sign if they give their permission for us to use the pictures?
Yes. As a matter of fact, we have a GAR form, and I can guarantee you people are not using it. So it's, do you know it, Tom? I don't know the number.
I don't know the name of it because I never see it.
Yeah,
but there
it's called
is-
take video. If you go in your search bar and type video, it'll pop up.
Yeah.
But that it's photo and video permission, and you want to give that to your seller landlord and say, okay, you've got a tenant in there. I can't send a photographer in there until you get this signed.
Right.
That way the tenant can move any personal items they don't want in that photo.
Okay, so it has to be signed by the owner. We don't have to get it signed off by the tenant. Is that correct?
No, the tenant needs to sign off on it. The owner needs to get it to the tenant.
Okay,
because he's the landlord, and the landlord needs to get the tenant to sign off on that we're going to, giving us permission to take photographs of the property where they have their things in there.
okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. I've got one for you guys, and this has to do with sign directionals. And I see this all the time where there's an open house directional. I saw one yesterday as I was driving through the neighborhood, and it just has the, there's no information on it other than the agent's name and open house. Please be aware that if you have a directional for an open house or a caravan or anything where you've got a sign pointing towards a property, it must also have the broker's name and phone number on that directional. So what I like to suggest is that when you have those directionals printed, you have them printed with whatever, open house, Keller Williams, and the phone number of the broker, and then get yourself a topper for the top of that sign. And I used to take coat hangers and cut them and the perforations, and I would put my topper on top of the directional that said Tom Fulkerson and my phone number on top of the directional. That is an approved directional.
Most of our sign companies can get all of that information on there if you go to our approved vendors. Also, open house signs in most counties can, especially for you newbies on the call, can only go down Friday. I think it's 5 o'clock, and they have to come up Sunday by 5 o'clock. And you can only place them in the right of way. Now, that doesn't mean someone won't come by and pull it up or take it before you have your open house, but legally, and we all break this rule, I'm sure, it's supposed to go down on Friday and come up on Sunday. What I typically do is just ask the seller, I'm gonna put them down Friday, can you pick them up on Sunday and put them in your garage? Call it a day. If you do that at the listing appointment, then I'm sure they'll accommodate you. And that goes for your directionals as well. They can't stay down either. We know they do, but we're here to tell you the correct way, what you do once we push you out of the nest. That's another call.
Well, and my own personal opinion is sometimes I see directionals a million miles away from the house. Okay. And that's just silly. Nobody's going to drive a mile because you've got a directional up. It needs to be close to the property or it's really of no value. Okay, we got a very quiet group today, guys. Come on, help us out a little bit. I know you've got issues you'd like to talk about. Let us hear them.
All right, I'll ask one since I'm in the middle of it and trying to figure out what I do here. So I had a contract that got terminated, and then the seller has decided he really wants to take it off the market. So I tried to get it. I had Jason sign a withdrawal form, sent it FMLS, and they've sent it back this morning saying I have to take it off pending and put it on active. What do I do to get, they're saying I can't withdraw it in a pending position.
I think, and I'm not the expert when it comes to those rules, our agent services manager is, but I think what has to happen is that it has to go back to active, and then they can remove it or withdraw it. I believe that's the process for getting rid of it.
And so I'm gonna call them, and that's what I was going to do.
I would
But
call them too. I mean,
You can change it
it's
to
kinda
active and
silly
then,
because you're gonna get it inundated with phone calls when it's active again. But I believe that it has to go back active before they can withdraw the listing.
you can change it to active and then immediately change it to hold status.
Yeah.
Ah. Well, then why can't I just go from pending to hold?
Well, you may be able to do that, but some of those statuses, you have to go back to active first, then change it to hold.
Okay,
or
okay, well,
whatever,
that's easy
but,
enough to do quickly. And would I put verbiage in that,
So I would
contract-
just say it's going to be withdrawn in the private remarks, that it's
Okay.
in the process of being withdrawn.
Perfect, no explanation, just.
Yep.
Okay,
Also,
I have a
guys,
question.
on that same note, when you are withdrawing a listing, please go ahead and remove your photographs from that listing, because otherwise it's going to stay out in the Zillow Realtor.com world for forever. And so go ahead and remove those photographs when you are withdrawing a listing.
Yeah, that's very important because we are all used to Zillow being a marketing firm. They are no longer a marketing firm. They're a marketing firm / brokerage. So they are now our competitor. So why would you leave your photos out there for them to, first of all, they put them in the wrong order. They're doing whatever they want with it because now you have uploaded, or we haven't, but our MLS is uploaded to them and they can do whatever they want with those photos. So it's very important now that you remove your photos after they belong to you. So I would take them down.
I have a question, and I invite all brokers because this is a great one. I recently had a contract where I wrote an offer with a temporary occupancy agreement on there, and you know, on the TOA it did say $0 for the per diem for the seller to stay there. 2 days before closing, the seller says, yeah, we're going to move out in 9 days after closing, and there's nothing you guys can do about it. How would you handle that? Because we gave them 1 day, but they said that they're going to take 9 days to move.
Well, that's a tough situation because there's really, by the time you got around to evicting them from the house, they're going to be gone. And so that's a very, very difficult situation to deal with just because of the timing. I mean, you can't overnight just have somebody ejected from the house. However, at closing, you are supposed to receive a set of keys. So there's nothing to prevent you from going ahead and moving your stuff in. It's an ugly situation at best. Deborah, any thoughts from you?
Did you know that they were going to, when did they tell you they were staying?
2 days before closing.
So then I probably would have tried to negotiate some money. It sounds like they were being a little stubborn, so by telling you there's nothing you can do about it. So they kind of knew what they were doing, I would assume. But I would probably say, well, that's all well and good, but we can either move the closing to accommodate your 9 days, or we are going to need to charge you, do an amendment to this form and charge you X amount of dollars that we can hold in escrow with the attorney until you're out. Because 1 day is a heck of a lot different than 9 days. Anything could happen in 9 days. I mean, anything could happen in 1 day, but 9 days, they could trash the place in 9 days.
Right.
So, you know, that's it. And I agree with Tom. They're supposed to get a set of keys and fobs and so on and so forth, so that they can, and they have the right to come in and out of the house. If they can make the statement, there's nothing you can do about it. Well, your buyer could say, well, we're going to start moving some of our things into the garage until you're out. And there's nothing you can do about that because this is our home. So it's one of those things where it can get nasty, but I agree with Tom. It takes at least 30 to 45 days to evict someone. And by the time you go through that process and cost, they will be out.
You've got to really side on the side of caution here as well. If they said that, like there's nothing you can do about it, to me, that's violent. That sounds very violent to me. And I think that I would try to not make the situation any more explosive than it might turn into. And, that's probably not what anybody wants to hear, but I mean, that's just the reality of it. I mean, you don't want to get into a situation where they start destroying the house because they get upset because you are moving things into your property, which technically it's your property. But again, either try to work out a settlement or you just say that's fine, but we need to start moving our things into the garage until you're out.
Okay, thank you. And also, if you're curious to know how this ended, it did not end well at all. So just so you know.
I had a feeling it didn't because I've, as the broker, I've had to deal with some temporary occupancy situations where it was not clear what would happen. So thanks for sharing that, because I was sitting here thinking to myself, that didn't end well, or it's not going to end well. I didn't know if you had closed yet.
No, we didn't close. We ended up backing out, and it was so messy. This was one of the messiest deals I've done in my career. I lost hair, just so y'all know.
Well, you're experienced now. There's more messiness to come as long as you stay in real estate.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, guys, we got about 5 more minutes left here. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to discuss before we sign off, or we're just going to go ahead and end a little bit early? I hope this was informative for you guys. Again, we are here to help you in any way that we can. We deal with these situations daily. So please give us a call if you need us, and we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
I wanted to just
All right.
tell everybody the next broker strategy is going to be about your E&O insurance. You pay a monthly bill, and on that monthly bill, E&O, and I think a lot of people don't understand how it's used, why they're paying for it. I'm putting a lot more claims in than I think I ever have in this environment. I think that's the reason that's happening. So we want to be able to talk to you about it, what it is, why you're paying it, and what happens if you have to use it. So that's what I'll be discussing on I think it's the 27th, the next broker strategy. Whatever, not next Monday, but the following Monday.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, guys.
Thank
Everybody
you.
have an award-winning day.
Thank you.